And all right, hey everybody, I'm live here with Jason Savino from Potions in Motion. Jason, thanks so much for meeting with us and trying to help make sense of everything that's going on right now. For the folks at home who might not know who you are, can you give us just a brief resume on your experience and what got you to where you are right now?
Sure. Yeah, I've been down in Florida, South Florida, for the past like 15 years. Opened up a bartending company about 15 years ago called Potions in Motion. We slowly became the largest bar and beverage catering company probably in the state of Florida, maybe even in the country at that point. About halfway through that journey, about 7 years into that, we added on and started building a food division and built up our catering company. And that's been going strong for the past 8 years with food and beverage catering. And then recently we've gotten into some restaurant ventures with some private properties in GL Homes communities. So we had a restaurant, Prime 7, within the Seven Bridges development. We built that over the last 3 years. And then we have another restaurant inside of the Bridges and working on some other projects in different communities like that.
Yeah, and I got to say, and I know I've said this before, you've got a beast of an operation. I mean, your facility that you have is, I mean, it's just like catering mecca. You know, I mean, everywhere I look, there's chafing dishes and silver, and just, I mean, on any given day when you were pre-COVID, how many events would you be doing?
In season, the business did anywhere from 25 to 35 events a week, anywhere from 30 people up to 3,000 people, different combinations of corporate and private events. Our business model was based of about 85% corporate and about 15% private occasions. And everything
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but 85% corporate, I got to imagine that's just pretty much vanished, right?
Wow. Zero. So the corporate went to zero, and it's still at zero. Now, corporate events are things like boat shows, concerts. We had a lot of concession deals with different cities and municipalities. City of Palm Beach Gardens, we did all the concessions for. Beverage concessions for the city of Boca when they would do their parades or their Italian fests. You know, different functions like Art Basel. I mean, you know, bigger corporate-backed catering and, you know, promotion events for big business was really what our stronghold was. Unfortunately, that business has dropped off a cliff, and I don't see any. I don't see anything in the near future of that coming back. So we've pivoted and tried to focus more on the private events, which have obviously turned into smaller functions. But that's where the catering company has really been pivoting lately.
Okay, so back to I guess, you know, if you could, let's walk the viewers through.
Sure.
You know, when that first day happened, and I mean, did the phones just start ringing and everybody was just like canceling events, or how did those first couple of days, once we started to go into a lockdown situation, if you could just kind of walk us through those beginning days? I don't want to put you on a flashback or anything like that.
No, I listen. I remember the date specifically. I had some of our team members were out in Vegas at the Cater Source convention. And that was the second week of March. And, you know, conventions were still going on. Cater Source convention is the annual largest catering convention. That was still going on. We were getting ready for the Palm Beach Boat Show, which was coming up in about a week and a half. And in a matter of, I would say, 48 hours, the immediate events started getting turned off. You know, but in the beginning, like everybody else, we had no knowledge of how long this was going to be. We had no knowledge of what the dimension or the scope of this pandemic was going to do. So, you know, we were just prepared for a small speed bump. You know, and a small speed bump, I would compare to like a hurricane. You know, a hurricane comes through and, you know, your restaurants close, your businesses close, but, you know, it's not a year-long disaster. You know, things get back to business as usual. So we were not doing anything. There was nothing really done internally. We didn't do any layoffs. We had some immediate cancellations. March is a very busy month for us in catering in the restaurants. And we were just kind of going with the flow. And then we started, you know, hearing about more things getting shut down and more cancellations. And then I knew that, you know, we had to immediately try and adjust our costs right away. You know, coming out of the gates, we couldn't run full steam. So we started making some initial adjustments. Our big adjustments didn't really happen until we noticed that a lockdown was coming. And that was when we pivoted the catering company to food delivery. And we did that pretty quick. In about 3 days' time, we built a couple of websites. We had a market website that just sold proteins, which in the beginning of April and the end of March, it was very hard to find proteins. Supermarkets were out of meat. They were out of fresh seafood. We had an incredible amount of inventory on these items because we were getting ready to go into probably $50,000 to $100,000 worth of catering events over the next couple of weeks. So in the beginning, I was just trying to move inventory. I'm trying to move things that were perishable, stuff that I could liquidate into cash, things that I could replace people's payroll with. So we started looking around here, and that was how the market started. And then, we started to see a need. Once the lockdown came, there was really a need for cooked food. The restaurants, that did some sort of delivery, everybody was moving into delivery, and we started moving into that sphere, and we were very successful. At the height of it, we were doing about 3,500 a night in delivered dinners, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 7 days a week on a skeleton crew of chefs and delivery drivers, all internal delivery drivers as well. We repurposed all of our bartenders and our servers. They became delivery drivers. Chefs, everybody was all hands on deck for preparing the food. The website was up, 7 days of tech support. Office was open 7 days a week now, taking orders, and that left. That was very successful through the end of May.
Right, and I know Chef had a big part to do with that. He was telling me normally you run about 50 chefs, and that got pared down to like a dozen.
Right. So we have a dozen chefs that are on our payroll full time, which work internally here. And then, the whole scope of everything between all the country club restaurants, all of the chefs that we hire on a part-time basis for events, on an average week, we could have anywhere between 35 and 55 chefs out. That went down to, everything dropped like by a factor of 80%. And it's still dropping now because the catering business is really quiet and the food delivery has gotten a lot more quiet. So right now I'm just trying to conserve expenses right now and try and reduce our overhead as big as possible because it is the off season. So we're normally used to doing this in July and August. We're just trying to conserve a little more just because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We can't predict what's going to happen with the event industry, but I don't think it looks good for the near future.
Well, that's the thing. And I think that's kind of this, I don't need third phase that we're kind of going through is just all this confusion that's been happening. I'm reading this morning in Miami, they're starting to protest. The restaurants are actually organizing the protest. Calle Ocho is like, if we don't get more outdoor seating, we're all done as a group. All the restaurants on Calle Ocho are going to be done. I think United Airlines they're going to have a demonstration there today. And, I know for a fact when the alcohol thing came out last week, all the restaurants they were down to like 10%. Blue Anchor was telling me they did 10% of what they were doing in COVID. You know what I mean? It was just this misinformation and confusion, which just creates fear, which makes everybody just kind of tighten up and not do anything.
I mean, my personal opinion on the restaurant industry, I think is going to get hit the hardest. The reason being, unlike the travel industry, which is also getting hit hard, the travel industry doesn't have a lot of players in it. They got big corporate hotels, big corporate cruise lines, big corporate travel companies. They're going to get an incredible amount of support. Restaurants are all, aside from the large chains that are publicly traded like Cheesecake Factory and Ruth Chris, those ones will be fine. They have a lot of private equity money behind them. It's basically made up of a lot of independents that there's no central area for anyone to get support. Now, once they killed all the outdoors, once they killed the indoor seating to 50% to 25%, I mean, you've been in the restaurant business. There's no way a restaurant can survive with the expenses that they've been carrying on any model less than 100%. Right. The margins are so tight anyway. Now, given the fact that the fear of the general population, they don't want to come out as much anyway, that's another factor. But once you limit the capacity of the place that we're paying rent on, where we're getting no relief from the rent help, landlords, if they're furloughing rent on, you're lucky. The landlords that I've experienced my rent went up 30% here in the past 2 months, which may have been just a bad timing, but I can't even believe when I opened up the envelope and saw the paperwork that the landlord had the audacity to raise our rent 30% for May and June.
I mean, the news. They're not seeing what's going on.
Well, they're business as usual. I understand everybody's got bills to pay and the CAM went up, and that would have been in time the CAM went up anyway. But I mean, you couldn't pick a worse time to raise a restaurant or a catering company's rent. I think that cities need to do more for the restaurant business. I think they need to shut down blocks. I think blocks like Las Olas or blocks like Meisner Park, I mean, they should shut those blocks down. There's no need to have the traffic rolling through the center of Meisner Park when restaurants like Max's Grill and, Bluefin and other places can be using that real estate to dine if they can, move their tables outside. Las Olas, do we really need to get down Las Olas with all that traffic? Can we detour a section off? Who knows? Atlantic Avenue and Delray, take a back road or something. But if those things don't start happening like that and we remain at this type of occupancy in restaurants, I'm predicting 80% of restaurants aren't going to be able to make it.
No, and that was the beginning prediction, and everybody was like, I can't hardly believe that. I still hold to that. I really do. And to go back about the shutting down of the streets, I'm not that familiar. I mean, I work in Fort Lauderdale, so Las Olas I'm familiar with. But Atlantic Avenue, I've kind of been in that debate a little bit, and just to kind of, the restaurants like City Oyster and Rocco's and them, their argument was they don't want to close down the block. What they want is valet parking. And the way they're looking at it is, hey, I got my spending customers that are coming in. They don't want to walk the avenue like some of these other folks. They want to come in. They want to park their car. They want to get out of their car, go in, eat, turn around, come back, get in their car, and go home. So it was kind of interesting because I was of that opinion too at first of, shut down the ad. That could make sense, or even just try a block. I did go to Lake Worth recently, and I was at Dave's Last Resort, and they did close down K Street for him. So he's got 2 restaurants, and they were able to close that side street down, which I think he was able to add another, 14 tables out there. So that helped.
Right. I mean, I've seen the model. I was in Asheville, North Carolina a few weeks ago, and that state is barely through phase 1. So in Asheville, which is a very boutique restaurant atmosphere, they closed down all the side streets. And there's 0% inside dining really. So it's either outside dining or nothing. And, when you make a restaurant do that, you really got to, you're on a sidewalk. They couldn't put more than 3 tables on the sidewalk. So you go from 200 capacity to 18. I mean, that's not even, that's a joke. But they cut down a lot of side streets. But I mean, I don't even think that's going to help in the big picture. I think restaurants of every size need to really try and get ahead of the curve and try and see where they project life is going to be in this time in 2021, because they're not going to be, if they're doing 25%, they're not going to be around if they don't think right in the end of 2021. I mean, I talked with a friend of mine yesterday who's got a couple of pizza places, and I told him, I said, listen, the best thing you could do right now is try and what I'm looking to do for the fall is try to move into more of a ghost kitchen concept for restaurants and try and tell people in restaurants, you got to maybe get some other locations so you can increase your delivery sphere. Food delivery is going to stay big. I mean, Uber just bought Postmates, that business, all those guys are trying to consolidate and get more players out of the market. Food delivery is not going anywhere. And the worse life gets in the near future, the higher food delivery is going to be. But food delivery isn't sustainable in a regular restaurant business model. The overhead is way too high. There's too much rent. There's too much rent in high rent areas. There's front of the house staff. There's just expenses that don't make sense. So plus you got to kick 20 to 30% out to the delivery guys. So, delivery is a dead industry unless you're set for delivery. And the number one, like companies like Wingstop and, Papa John's, these guys are having incredible profits right now because that's all they do. It's going to be hard for a lot of restaurants to pivot, but even like, an Outback should be retooling, getting out of places that are big rent and maybe doing just Outback to go pop-ups that are ghost kitchens. People still get the same quality Outback food, but they just don't have all the Outback won't be running the expense. It's not going to change the price of the product. It's just going to change their margins.
Right. I remember reading about that a while back with the ghost kitchens. There were some people that were doing like 3 restaurants out of 1 kitchen. And if you went onto their website, you would pretty much think that this was an operating sit-down type fast casual restaurant. But really what it was they branded it that way. They had 3 separate websites, but it was really all being cooked out of the same kitchen. Do you see that as being a potential model going forward?
Listen, if you're doing delivery, you could have 5 sushi guys next to each other in one big facility. It's all a matter of the menus and everything. There's really not that much competition then. If you're just a factory to produce food for third-party delivery companies, it's pretty, it doesn't really matter where you are. You have to be in the cheapest place possible for rent. You have to be in the place that's the most accessible to the client base that you want to reach as far as a radius. And beyond that, the websites and everybody else is going to get you the sales. I mean, you can do your marketing as well to drive more traffic to you, but that's got to be a model on everyone's plate right now, because Florida's going backwards right now. As far, I mean, the next step is a full shutdown. It's not looking good. The numbers wise is not looking good for anything but more of a more stringent shutdown. So this could happen again next year. It could happen in the spring. It could be a second wave, third wave. Vaccine may not work. Who the hell knows? But to keep your brand good, if you have a good brand, let's say you got a Rocco's Tacos brand, he's got locations all over the place. I'm sure he's part of a bigger conglomerate. He's in a big restaurant group, but maybe there's Rocco's Tacos to go stations that start popping up in strip malls and old subways that have been vacant for 5 years. 1,500 square feet, $2,000 a month rent. It becomes a factory to make Rocco's Tacos food just for food delivery. Third-party delivery companies. The biggest problem I hear from restaurant guys that I'm friends with, all the restaurant guys, is they're getting killed on the money that the delivery companies are taking out. But if they reduce their overhead totally, they could accommodate for that extra 20 or 30%. You got a guy that sells a pizza for $15 and delivery dudes or some other delivery company takes 5 out of that $15 sale. Maybe it costs the guy $8 to make a pizza. Is it even worth it for him to make the pizza at this point?
Yeah,
but that's because they're doing it with restaurant overhead.
It used to be the old day was, you had a couple of kids, 16-year-old kids that brought their car, you paid them for gas or whatever, and they would deliver for you. What's changed about that model? Is it insurance or what you're required to do as an owner now? Why is it that we're relying on these big conglomerates to do the delivery when, it used to be a couple of high school kids that would be able to deliver for you?
Because the consumer doesn't feel it. The consumer is all about ease. And what's easy about the consumer is touching a button. And the button has a Uber Eats or a DD or a Postmates button. They don't feel there's no financial hit on the consumer side. They're just getting the food just as fast as if the 16-year-old delivered it. So they don't see the difference. It's on the vendor side. And I think when all these third-party delivery companies started, they were telling the restaurants, this is a piece of business you wouldn't have normally had. We're bringing a client to you. It's a little reduced. It's like another vertical, but it was never meant to be the only vertical. So from the consumer side, they're going to do whatever's simpler. And they built great apps. They built incredibly efficient websites, and everything is real easy with Uber Eats. I mean, they're not profitable yet, but by Uber Eats buying Postmates last week, that means that there's a guy that's making hundreds of millions. It's a team of guys around a table that are making a lot more than you and I will probably ever make, that decided that they should buy up other delivery companies looking way into the future. That's got to tell you something on how they expect the restaurant industry to evolve. Post-COVID, COVID happening, more pandemics, no pandemics. This has turned people into a much more delivery-based. Their eating model has changed from where I'll go out 5 nights a week to now I'll go out 1 night a week and order in 4 nights a week. So it's changed their pattern, changed people's eating patterns. People still got to eat every day, but the event of going out to eat. And
not many people can cook.
No, well, I mean, it was a run on flour a couple of months ago, but for baking, but that ran that got tired fast. But no, I mean, and that's where the restaurant's getting killed too, the liquor, because the liquor revenues are incredibly high margins.
Right.
So if you don't get that glass of wine, or if you don't get that pre-dinner cocktail that probably has enough margin in it to cover the plate of dinner, you lose that. I mean, now you're really in trouble.
Well, that's what I keep looking at with the Atlantic Avenue, and I don't think people see that storm that's ready to roll in because of Rocco's Tacos. Their gravy gets made from 10 o'clock at night until closing when they're really not serving that much food anymore. It's all liquor, it's all alcohol, it's all margaritas, where your margins are much better. And you've just basically eliminated most of that. So like you said, where's your revenue coming from? It's not going to match your $70 a square foot base rent that you're paying, and like you said, those landlords they're furloughing your rent. I hear a lot of the restaurants, they may have gotten 1 free month and then they were furloughed a month or two. So now you're rolling into the slowest time of the year and your rent is rent and a half and your rent is rent and a quarter, where you're struggling to make that rent anyway. Now you're paying another third on top of that. That's what they're asking for.
I went out. I go out to on Thursday nights. I go to I try and pick some of the same restaurants I patronize every month or every week. I went to Gonzo last night, which is an incredible sushi restaurant out in the Delray Marketplace.
Yes, it is.
Chefs there from Zuma up down in Brickell. I mean, they got probably some of the best Asian food I've ever had in my life. And I go in there last night, and the gastropub is closed. Batch.
Yeah.
Thursday night. I go, what's going on with Batch? You know, the bar's still stocked. So I look on my phone, and Batch has a couple of locations. Yesterday they decided to close Miami, and they close Delray. They kept open one in Palm Beach. But I mean, these are big restaurants, big rent, big gene pool of staff. And I guess they're either saying, let me take a temporary pause, or they're throwing in the towel now. Sometimes you got to know way in advance. You got to throw in the towel. If there's no light at the end of the tunnel, you gotta wave the white flag. You have to move on to something else. It's like taking stock losses. If it ain't coming back, it ain't coming back. And, you know, we've been making a lot of moves around here to reduce our overhead, because we know events are going to come back eventually. People are still going to get married. Boat shows, people still got to do stuff. We just don't know when that light at the end of the tunnel is. And I would assume it's probably going to be related to some sort of medical breakthrough with a vaccine or a cure. But that still could be 2 years away. So I may be in that same boat. Who knows? I may have to downsize to, instead of 12,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet. Who knows? I mean, you want to survive.
Right.
But
I've been talking about with restaurants is, and one of the things we tried to do with the supper club in the beginning was to front load the restaurants. You know, all the restaurants are kind of switching to that takeout model and whatever, and they're still trying to work with that original menu. I've been recommending the restaurants, you got to pare it down. You got to pare it down.
Way down.
Yeah. You got to be able to multi-purpose stuff. So you've got one piece of chicken, but you need to prepare it 5 different ways. You know what I mean?
Listen, go into your POS system, pull up the last 6 months of what you sell, get rid of the bottom 70% of your crap. You know what? If you're going to survive through this, you got to go for your 30% of what makes your money and what is people willing to call up in order for delivery. And you got to roll with that. I told my buddy yesterday, Eric Lamb, he was working here. He's got Windy City Pizza. He's like, I'm having trouble with all this stuff on delivery, dudes, and there's so many things on the menu. I said, just do pizza on the menu. You guys, this great pizza, master pizza, and just offer that with the third-party companies. Your margins are better on the pies. It's very, you can monetize those pies a lot easier than guys getting a salad. He's got 6 wings. I got the fryer going. I got to pop a salad in. I got to make a meatball hero. Just do, blow it out with just pies, man. You guys make great pie. Blow it out, and simplify your ingredient list. Simplify everything. And
stuff that cross purposes, stuff you're using in different dishes. Yeah, exactly that. I've been trying to. Yeah, exactly that, man. Exactly that. I hear you, and I try to preach this to the restaurants. Exactly what you said. Go through your POS, the stuff that the top 30%. There's your menu. Get rid of everything else, and then from those, try to figure out, can I use the same piece of chicken on these 3 dishes? Consolidate. So your orders are smaller. And you're doing basically what you're good at. What's your wheelhouse?
You got to do that. And I told my buddy, I was looking at Albert from Tucci's Pizza. Albert Tucci's over in Boca downtown. They've been around forever. I said, Albert, man, you got a great opportunity. You guys got a great brand. You got the name, the Tucci's brand. And I said, but for your delivery sphere, you can only deliver like in East Boca. I said, now would be the time for you to look into, like in this time, maybe bringing the brand to Jupiter and bringing it down to Fort Lauderdale and bringing it to West Boca. Get into a place where it's cheap real estate, but just opening up a place that's like a Tucci's delivery only concept. The same brand, the same ingredients, but now you can expand your delivery sphere. Because the one problem is if you only have one location in East Boca, you're kind of stuck to that radius. And maybe you can make it. But if you could open up a satellite location with very low overhead, especially with the amount of people that are going to be going out of business and the amount of commercial space that's going to be opening up in the next 6 to 12 months, with probably kitchens that are already in there and hoods ready to go, just put the key in the door and change the oil in the fryer, and you're up and running. This may be a good time for brands that have been around for a while to increase their coverage, just like what's going to happen in every other industry. You're going to see guys go out of business, and the same guys are going to take over and get more market share. The world still needs the same amount of pizza every day. Okay, the amount of pizza made every day in Fort Lauderdale is not going to change much. But if you limit the suppliers of it, they're going to have to go somewhere else, and you're going to see all these restaurants go out of business in the next 6 months. So every sushi restaurant that goes out, now I got one less place to order sushi from. Next taco place goes out. I got one less place to order tacos from. So that business, people still want sushi. They're going to find it somewhere. But it's going to be an opportunity for the strong guys to really take over during a downtime, get the advantage of less expensive rents, get leases that they can negotiate now that are more aggressive, and they'll be around 5 years from now. Maybe they'll have 12 locations now, and it becomes like a mini burger fight. And then, who knows after that? That's how they start. One burger joint, two burger joint. Next is 200 burger joints.
Right.
And then they sell for a couple of $100 million, and it's c'est la vie. They're out.
And I think that's, I've said that in the beginning with everybody, and that's our biggest fear, I think, is losing. When I did my interview with the Today Show, I said, this is our last bastion of small business. Hardware stores have all turned into Home Depots and Lowe's, and all these businesses have come in and done exactly that during regular times. And now you've got this pandemic that's kind of created this situation where restaurants, especially, like you said, the hotels, not so much, because they're bigger corporate. They've got financing behind them. They have equity behind them. The larger restaurants, the Ruth Chris, they're going to be fine. And now what's going to happen is all these little guys that are going to go out are going to get gobbled up. And, that's my biggest fear, is that there's going to be a Chili's, an Applebee's, and, a Domino's on every corner.
Yeah, there could be, but people are also, their palates have changed, and they like going to unique dining experiences. I think you're going to have to look to people that have the knowledge, that know how to forecast, really good business moves. And these guys are going to take over in this time. They're going to take over, for every 10 mom and pops that close, maybe they take 2 of those locations and they build a bigger brand. Look at Chuck's, 46 years. Chuck's out of business. They, it just didn't make sense. And then, Ruth, you're not going to see a Ruth Chris go out of business, or any of the Darden restaurants go out of business. They have enormous capital behind them, and they really, they're, I don't see any of those going out. You may see a couple in really slow areas go out, but you're going to see the one-offs. The guy that has one restaurant, the family that has one location, 2 locations, those ones are going to take a hard hit with the big overhead. The guys that have low overhead, the people that have been in business, that are doing massive business in 2,000 square feet, they'll probably do fine. They can probably weather this storm. And there's probably going to be a lot more competition in that 2,000 square foot location space, just because they're making food for delivery only.
Well, that's where restaurants were going anyway, with the whole fast casual wave that was coming on, with the minimum wage going up. A lot of the restaurants were like, well, I can't pay servers anymore. I can't put a full server staff. So let me switch to that fast casual model, which, people walk in, you put your order in at the counter, you grab a number or whatever, you sit down, you got one guy maybe, or 2 people walking around, either delivering the food and dropping it off, or wiping down tables. So that was kind of happening anyway. So yeah, I definitely see that 2,500 square foot space and under, that second gen. And to your point, I think exactly that, finding those locations that have an under market rent, but around there is a good density of population that you can service. And that would be a delivery model, Right.
And the other good thing about ghost kitchens, if no one's ever going there, you don't have to sign long leases. You don't have to, sign your life on the line with personal guarantees, because if things don't work out in a ghost kitchen in 24 months, you can move around a corner. It's a ghost kitchen. Nobody knows where you are. So, by those location-based places, I got to be on the corner of Atlantic Avenue. I got to be on the end of Las Olas. Prime real estate, $100 a square foot, $120 a square foot. That's unheard of. But, I really...
What do you see happening in those markets? Let's start kind of forward projecting a little bit. We've hit the half-hour mark. Let's. Where do you see those rents are going to have to come down, right? What's going to happen to Atlantic Avenue? You think tumbleweed's going to be blowing down there in the next couple of months, or
probably?
Restaurants
yeah.
going to go dark?
I think restaurants are going to go dark for a while. Yes, I don't think landlords are going to just wake up one day and go, I'm going to drop the rent in half, and that's unfortunate. But they're going to have to get a food business in there at some time, and maybe that food business ends up being like a Chipotle, or a publicly traded BurgerFi, or a publicly traded Ruth Chris operation. So unfortunately, you may see restaurants replaced by bigger restaurants, private equity backed restaurants that have deeper pockets that may want to scoop up those properties. You know, and now we're back to all the commercial.
They're not going to pay those rents though, right? I mean, those rents are going to have to adjust.
They'll adjust, but they'll probably get better lease terms because, you know, you sign a lease with a big company like that, it's going to be a long-term lease. It becomes almost an anchor at that point. So there's value in it for a landlord to take a national brand anchor that probably like a McDonald's or a Ruth Chris or a Cheesecake Factory. But, you know, I don't think you're going to see tumbleweed, but I think you're going to see a lot of vacancies. And I just don't, it's math. I mean, how do you pay if you're making 10% margins annually as a restaurant, which I think is fair, who knows? You know, if you lose 50% of your revenue, how do you pay any of your bills? You know, I mean, the rent is only one part of it, but you know, your insurance, your electricity, you know, the walk-in's not sucking up any less fuel. You know, you can't turn the freezer on 50%. So, I mean, all these things are still going full bore. And the only thing that's changed is your volume. And I don't even want to, bars, I don't even know. I mean, that business has got to be, that business could totally, bars and nightclubs. What's your projection? What do you do? Throw in a towel now? I mean, you just stop now, shut the doors tomorrow? Where's the light at the end of that tunnel? 2023?
The only people I even see that are remotely optimistic with bars and nightclubs are the people that own the dirt. You know what I mean? So at least they're not paying a rent right now. But even then, they're just kind of like, all right, well, you know, I'm not hemorrhaging cash. You know, I may have no revenue coming in, but at least I'm not paying a rent. I own the building. I'm paying the taxes on the building. But, you know, those are the only people I don't see really nervous right now. The other people, and I'm talking to them, they're nervous. You know, we're going on 4 months now, not a dime of income. I don't think and I don't know how I'd love to get your opinion on this. I don't think the municipalities, you know, the local cities, really, they don't care. It just seems like they're not willing to think outside the box, you know, to your point about outdoor seating and how can we work this out. You know, it just seems like they don't care. And they're not going to realize it until all of a sudden they realize their tax base has been dropped by 50%.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, they're going to have no sales tax revenue. They're going to have, nobody's going to pay their property tax. I mean, everything's going to trickle down to the state's going to make a ton less money, but I don't think they really care. I don't think the federal government cares either about the restaurant industry too much. There has not been any specified type of subsidy or type of, you know, assistance to the restaurant industry. You know, we saw the PPP program come out and that was okay. It did put a good chunk of money in some people's pockets, but then they changed the rules. So if you got your PPP money in April, let's just say you found a small bank and you managed to get through round 1 of PPP and you got your $100,000 and they told you had 8 weeks to spend it. Well, in the 8th week, they then say, well, you know what? It's the middle of June. You can now take an extra 16 weeks. But I just blew 8 weeks on my staff watching Netflix during a shutdown. So, and I had to pay payroll taxes on it. So yeah, you give me the $100,000. I got to pay 8% payroll taxes to be the vehicle to funnel the money from the federal government to the guys watching Netflix. And now I'm stuck with an 8% payroll tax bill. I blew the money when I could have used it to do something more productive if I could spread it out. And who knows if they're even going to forgive it. The application for that's probably going to be a shit show. So, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups there, but, you know, I get a busy week. I call workers to come back to work, and I understand their position, but nobody wants to come back to work because they're making $900 to $1,000 a week on unemployment with the extra kicker. Some of those people didn't even make that working 55 hours a week. So I can't blame them. You got to go for the money. But how is a business supposed to deal with their employees or trained employees they've had for 10 years, office people, salespeople that won't come back to work because they're making a better dollar there? And then let's just say they decide to come back, and they did what most restaurants did 3 weeks ago. Okay, I got my guys back. I put them back on salary. Boom, no more inside dining in Miami. I got to fire everybody again. That is nuts. That is the most bizarre thing in the world that no one is talking about in the federal government on who's gonna come up with, you know, now they got to go back on unemployment. It's a disaster. I mean, people should be on unemployment. If they got unemployed, everybody should be making money. I get it, but there's no help really for the businesses that are being affected in our industry by this. There's been zero help, zero. You know, you go take out an SBA loan, that's great. Well, now you have more debt, and who knows if that $150,000 is going to buy you enough time. But, you know, there needs to be some focused restaurant help, whether it's tax relief, whether we don't pay taxes for years, whether there's a tax holiday, whether we have a mandatory rent holiday. I don't know. There's got to be some sort of, I don't think it's going to happen, but you would need a bailout like that, or some sort of legislation that overrides your lease or overrides your taxes or overrides something for certain industries that got so affected for these guys to even have a chance to survive. If nothing like that happens, it's going to be a domino effect. There'll be one after another. Every week there'll be another company going out of, every day there'll be another restaurant going out of business.
And do you think like the Dardens and the Ruth's Chris, do you think they're out there kind of looking right now going, oh, there's one, there's another one, that one could be good?
I mean, a great guy to watch, Tillman Fertitta, is a great guy to follow. And
Yes.
If you follow Tillman Fertitta and figure out, I mean, this is a multi-billionaire who has so much knowledge.
Yeah, he's a Vegas guy. I knew him in Vegas.
Yeah, he owns the Golden Nugget. He owns the Houston Rockets.
Brother, right? Him and his brother?
Yeah, they own a massive chain of restaurants. And there's some big names like Bubba Gump Shrimp. And, you know, he's got some really big chain stuff in his portfolio. And he's saying the same thing. I mean, you know, yeah, he has private equity money behind him, and he's got a lot of financing going on. But it's just numbers and cents. If your restaurant is in, can you imagine if you were in Manhattan and you lost 4 months in Manhattan, what the rents are there and how tight the tables are? That's not even like a question on how you're going to survive in New York City. I mean, that at least you got a chance at. We're kind of in the suburbs here. But if you had to pay rent on the corner of Park Avenue and in Manhattan and figure out what that coffee shop rent is, and no one's been in there, that's a death sentence right there. It's got to be.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. You know, like I lived in Manhattan for 8 years, and you know, I'm eating a pizza, sitting at a table, standing up. My ass is in somebody's face. There's a 2-top, there's a 4-top. You know, that they have to have that density just to make the numbers work.
Right. Now, think about this. You got a coffee shop on the corner of Manhattan, okay? They have maybe 4 employees, right? But they've do a ton of volume. So now think about what their PPP loan was with 4 employees. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like the PPP loan did not take any other expenses into consideration. I may have 3 employees, but have a ton of rent because of where my location is. But then they make this rule that said you can't use it more than 25 or 40% now on rent. That doesn't make sense either. I mean, you're going to give somebody money as a grant. Let them use it for what they need. And what businesses needed was not to pay people at home to stay on Netflix, but they needed it to probably evolve their business to get into a working situation, whether they had to get into a ghost kitchen, whether they had to downsize and lease another space, or, you know, go from a bigger location to a small and have moving costs. That's what people need the money for. Restaurants, the same business, need money to evolve. If this model is not going to work in a 30,000 square foot location is not going to work, then they're going to need to evolve if they want to keep the brand going.
I talked to a few restaurants like that, and some of them were like, yeah, a lot of people with the PPP money, it's like you were almost paying for the past, the people I used to employ. And then some of them were like, well, I need to start taking this money for the future. Where am I going? How is this model going to look, to your point?
I knew a lot about the program in the beginning. I followed a lot about it, and a lot of people came to me for advice. And I told them, I said, listen, save as much of that money as you can. I said, I don't know, you know, in the beginning they said 25% can be used towards rent. Then they changed it to 40. I could see a place in the future where the government probably forgives the entire amount, no matter what you spend it on. If not, put the money away and save it to keep the business going. You know, if you don't use it for that, then give it back. Or if you got to pay 1% over the next 5 years, that's cheap money to borrow right now. I mean, I don't want to say you shouldn't give your money to employees sitting at home, but listen, let them collect their unemployment for that. The government's going to pay them to do that. Take the money and save it. Get a PPP loan now, put it away, and just sit on it. Because if you want to keep your business open, you may need to dip into that for opening inventory, for missed insurance payments, for FP&L that's 3 months behind. All these other really big factors that could get you through the downtime, and you'll be around when it picks up. There's no business that paid 8 weeks to people to sit home and watch movies that says that's a great decision, especially when I had to pay 8% in payroll taxes on it. So makes no sense at all. Why would they even charge the business owner payroll tax on moving that money through the system? It's the stupidest thing. But they got the bill written quick, so they didn't know. There's a lot of people in Congress. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. They had to get something going, and it did its purpose for that. But
Right. And one of the biggest things I'm hearing from restaurants now to that point is hiring people. They can't find employees right now. They can't find people to work. I'm trying to get that across to the customers out there who are texting me, hey, I got bad service or this happened or that. I'm like, listen, they can't find people to work for them right now because of what you're saying. They're making more money with the government sending them a check, watching Netflix at home. Who wouldn't want to do that,
So knowing that proves more to this ghost kitchen concept, The best part about a ghost kitchen, lower square footage, lower staff, lower overhead, higher margins, less people to rely on in the short term to get your product out there. You're still maintaining your brand. You're still maintaining your food quality. You're having all these other third-party delivery companies, which invested billions in marketing, market you. And if you could reduce your overhead enough to accommodate that 30%, who the hell needs dine-in right now? Dine-in, when the government wakes up one day and the governor goes, well, I don't think this week's a good week for dine-in in this county, but it's okay here. And, we're going to go backwards here. Then we'll go forwards. Then we may have to go backwards. I mean, you're being dictated on a lot of overhead you have for something that it depends on how many people get tested a week. It's totally irrelevant to how you're going to conduct business. At least if it goes, you open up smaller facilities, you don't have a lot of risk. People are going to be really cautious opening up restaurants in the future in any large size because they don't want to take on the risk. This could happen again in 2025 with a different pandemic. Who knows? We know the way the government operated once. They can do it again. So I think you're going to see a lot of big restaurants. You're not going to see a lot of big restaurants opening in the near future. It's all going to be small, very small locations, small indoor dining, high delivery volume, better margins, and low staff, which is going to crush the hospitality employment industry. You get bars out of the way and you lose front of the house. Put another 3% on unemployment, maybe more. I don't know the numbers, but it's probably more. If you lose front of the house in bartending, that's killer. That's killer.
Yeah, I'm getting those now. I'm getting my commercial brokers that are sending me properties, and it's like 5,000 square foot restaurants. And my first question is, can you split it? Because I just don't see that being a functioning model going forward.
No, I mean, it would be if you can transform the thing into like a fast casual or a high-end, high-volume delivery model. But if you can't do that, good luck. I mean, people dining in, I don't think dine-in is going to come back for a long time where you can put people packed in again. I think you got years before that comes back, years. And bars, I don't know. I mean, you may not see it's regional. So, if you go to Nebraska right now, you can go to a bar. I mean, I just traveled the Midwest. I was in Tennessee. It's business as usual there. I mean, in the middle of the mountains, bars are open. People are doing shots. Not many people are wearing masks. It's a regional issue. They see you pull up with a Florida license plate, they're throwing eggs at your truck. But
Really?
Everywhere I went,
Go home.
I went to go rent jet skis at some place on a lake, and I give my driver's license. The guy looked at me like, "Why are you coming here? Why are you wrecking our beautiful state?" It's like some sort of I'm going to call it like regional discrimination. Okay, people from Florida right now are it's like how we treated
like
people in New York.
And the lepers.
Yeah, it's the leper. The lepers.
We felt that way about New York in the beginning.
Right.
Everybody from New York was coming down here. I mean, the residential real estate market, especially where I live around in Delray Lake Ida, just lit up. A lot of transactions happen. That's starting to slow down now. But now they're doing it to us, and now we've become the pariah.
The black flag of the country. We're the dark spot.
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up. What do you, where do you see restaurants going from? I mean, we've kind of been touching on that the whole time, but any other final thoughts for any restaurateurs or bar owners out there right now to, what they should be keeping their eyes on, how they, maybe their philosophy going forward? I mean, we kind of touched on all that, but you maybe want to wrap it up real fast.
To wrap it up, I think, Congress comes back and then in a week or so, they're going to come out with another stimulus. Unfortunately, my opinion on that is I think it's just going to be another personal stimulus round. I don't think you're going to see any corporate help there for businesses. I think it's going to be another check program or something going out to people, which is fine. But you're in the slow season right now, and restaurants in Florida know how hard July and August are. And I don't see anything on the horizon in 2020 that's going to make life look any better in this industry. So I would just tell people, sometimes you got to throw the towel in and revamp your entire business model, take a small loss for a future larger gain. get out of something now and maybe transform your brand into a ghost kitchen delivery concept, fast casual concept. I mean, even go to a fast casual, trim it down into a line like a Chipotle model and, put all the ingredients out there and get people through the line in 4 minutes, get them out, put them in a bag and get them out, call a number, not think about bar revenue and liquor revenue as a part of your business model anymore, because that's probably gone for a while. And, try not to dump too much money in right now, because I don't think there's going to be much hope for restaurants in the next 6 to 12 months. I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah. And unfortunately, as much as I try to keep a positive spin on it and all that, every time I wake up, I read another article, another restaurant, and, the PPP monies and the rent abatement, I think is the term I use is it's a stay of execution.
Band-Aid. The Band-Aid that's falling off.
But you're still going to the chair, and that's why I kind of try to inspire people to order out twice a week. And if you don't feel comfortable dining in, then at least try to order out a couple of times a week. But, and also telling the restaurants, hey, pare down your menus. The quality of the food for people, is going to, people are getting, they're more conscious of their wallet. They want good value. To your point, yeah, they want a good quality meal at a good price point. And I think that going forward, paring down your menu, all those things we talked about are going to give you a fighting chance. But even still, there's a lot of variables that we don't know. We don't know where we're going to be in a month from now. We don't know. Are we going to be better? Are we going to be worse? It's just such a crazy situation.
You don't know, but when I was out to dinner last night, there's 3 other tables in a restaurant that holds 300 people, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that ain't going to last too long. So I think everybody's temporarily just buying time between if PPP funding is still doing it or their landlord has not filed an eviction notice because he can't yet. I think those things are going to start happening sometime in September, and that's probably the end of it's going to be the end of the road for a lot of all businesses. I mean, not just restaurants.
Right.
There's a lot of places that aren't selling merchandise as they should, and I think it's if there's no big federal help on the horizon, it's going to be a bad situation.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
sorry for the gloom and doom, but
no,
somebody can go back and watch this.
It's a sobering conversation, and it's kind of that conversation that we need to have. I mean, it's I get people all the time that are like, well, landlords are going to work with them, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not seeing it. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, let me know what AT&T says when they want to shut off your cell phone. Let me know how they're working with you. Or exactly. Verizon. Let me know, what those guys say.
FP&L and all these other people, and when they need to get paid, they're going to take a loss on that. I don't think so.
No,
Jason,
I don't think so.
I really appreciate your time, my friend.
Thanks, John.
It's great knowing you.
And you're doing a great thing, man. You're out there pounding the pavement every day. Everybody really I talk to appreciates that you've gotten such a following and you've helped so many businesses out that you got to really be proud of what you did in this time. You're like an angel in the industry, I must admit. You did a lot of good things for people that really needed some help.
I appreciate it, my friend. Take care.
All right. Be good.
You too.